Hey there guys, in today's video I'm discussing why I don't think monocolored decks are good decks for new players. Alright, so I'm discussing why I don't think monocolored decks are good for new players. Basically it goes back to a video I did somewhat recently, why I don't like monocolored decks. Now, this is for those people, again, to a degree, who, are more new players and I want to give them more advice and whatnot, mainly in this video. So if you're a new player and, you're trying to get into building decks or getting decks and whatnot, and you're looking at monocolored decks, I will just refer you to saying, if you want to watch that video, you can take what I say with a grain of salt and whatnot for the most part, but I will sort of explain it a little bit here. But again, I will say that, I am a person that does not like monocolored decks, not that I hate them, but again, that's just my preference not to play them, and I would advise people not to play them. But again, if you decide that that's what you want to do, then that's fine. I'm not going to lambast you or whatever. I'm not going to hunt you down or whatever, all this sort of stuff and whatnot. I'm just saying that if you get into playing monocolored decks, it comes with a lot of downside. Not that you have to play 5-color decks or 4-color decks or whatever or whatnot, or 3-color decks for it to be a good deck. I think 2-color decks are the perfect level of decks for new players to play, actually. I think they are enough, options within them to make good decks, and enough stuff that helps you cover one of your color's weaknesses with what the other color is really good at, and helps you find good synergy stuff that the other color often will have as well. I often find that when you're playing monocolored decks, you're very limited. You're very stuck to that one color, and that's why I don't think it's a good fit or a good style of deck for newer players to build. It's a very simple deck to build and a very budget sort of deck. So on that level, it is very good. But I find the fact that if you are in red, or if you're in blue or black, you're in a heavy disadvantage because you cannot deal with artifacts and enchantments very easily for the most part. Like red can deal with artifacts somewhat. Blue can sort of deal with artifacts somewhat as well nowadays. And black can deal with enchantments somewhat nowadays, which, again, most of those spells that are the blue and black spells are only 1 or 2 spells for the most part. Red has a couple of destroy artifact spells, not any ones that are super duper cheap or good, but still they do have them for the most part. But still, I don't think that, that trade-off of being maybe able to deal with artifacts is worth not being able to deal with enchantments. But I'm not going to say that red needs to be able to deal with enchantments. I don't think that that's a real thing that it needs to do, but I just think that you need to pair that with another color to make sure that you can deal with those problematic permanents. And again, for the most part, red can't deal with creatures on a single target level, so that's another reason to pair it up with another color, often white, because white can deal with both artifacts and enchantments and can deal with creatures on a single target level. That can be really helpful, though both of those colors do struggle a little bit with ramp and card draw and card advantage and whatnot. So, that is what it is. But again, that is the reality of the situation. But again, I don't like people being frustrated or being unhappy with what they get for the most part. I want people to be happy with what they get. I want people to be like, wow, dude, I put this deck together and it's really sweet and it's really amazing and it's really awesome. And, maybe I can't deal with everything every second of every hour of every day or whatnot, because that's just infeasible. But when it counts, I hopefully can deal with the things that will either stop me from winning or stop me from doing anything in the game, or stop my opponent from winning or taking over the game too much. So that's why I think being in monocolor really hurts you, especially being in mono red, mono blue, and mono black. Yes, sure. Again, blue has counter spells, so you can counter artifacts and enchantments. But again, for the most part, I don't think new players can really play around with counter spells. Like, yes, you can to a degree if you want to, or you want to try to, but I think counter spells require a lot of patience and a lot more deck building sort of strategies and whatnot to sort of be able to play well, and whatnot, because really you don't want to take a turn off in EDH, especially the earlier turns and whatnot. You want to play your 4-drop on turn 3 or 4 or whatever, depends if you've ramped or whatnot. You want to play your 5-drop on turn 4 or 5, again, depends if you've ramped and whatnot. Things like this. So you don't want to take those turns off. You don't want to sit there with this counter spell in your hand going, well, I can counter my opponent's 5-drop. Yeah, sure, you can counter your opponent's 5-drop, but then you haven't played your 5-drop or whatnot, so you're actually really behind your opponent, even if they haven't got their 5-drop. You might have get your 5-drop next turn, but it's just one of those things where you would have probably been better to had your 5-drop on the field and then, not counted their thing, waited another couple turns, and then counted their 6 or 7 or 8-drop or whatnot, because that would have been, one of the cards that probably would have won them the game, not one of their 4 or 5 drops or whatnot. Most of their 4 or 5 drops usually aren't, that bad or that good for the most part. It does depend what they are, again, because there are some really good 4 and 5 drops, but most of them are, like a little bit more for the most part, I find. So taking those turns off can be really hurtful. Yes, I know, again, there are free counter spells or 0 mana counter spells, but most people that are newer players don't have access to them because there are much more higher budget cards for the most part. So again, that's not a realistic ask for those people to hawk out a whole lot of money for all these 0 mana or free counter spells, just so that they can counter things for free when they really need to. Yeah, sure, they're really effective, but again, the monetary problem is another thing, because if you're a newer player, you're not going to want to invest so much, for the most part, in the game so quickly. So, just finding those budget cards that can really help you out for the most part is more worthwhile. And I think much more proactive for the most part, because, you've always got to have that 2 or 3 mana as soon as that thing is, being cast. You can't just be like, well, I don't have the 2 mana this time, well, I'll try and counter it next turn. Well, next turn's not going to matter because it's already on the battlefield, so it's already been cast. So the counter spell at that point doesn't do you anything for that particular permanent or whatever. It can work for another permanent, yeah, sure. But again, for the permanents on the battlefield, if that permanent is the permanent that you need to get rid of, then it's like, well, now what do I do? And that's like what a lot of what I mean is like when you're playing these monocolored decks, mono red, mono blue, mono black, suddenly there's an artifact or enchantment on the battlefield, or even a creature in some cases, and then you're just like, oh, cool, I top deck a counterspell. Wow, like the creature I need to kill because it's an Explanation or something like that, something really powerful, I really need to kill it, I really need to get rid of it. Wow, I'm not getting rid of that Explanation with this counterspell. Maybe I can get rid of the spell that they cast, or one of the spells that they cast, off of Explanation, but they're going to have so much mana that countering one spell on their turn is not going to really do enough. You really need to get rid of that Nyx Bloom action or whatnot. So having, Reality Shift, Pongify, or something like that would be a lot better in that case. Not that you can't run both, but, again, like for the most part, I don't see that you'll be able to, do enough with all your counter spells unless you've got like 50 of them or whatnot, and you really sandbag a turn. So again, you'll be way behind. But anyway, that is another sort of semi-subject to cover where like mana and like sort of turns and sort of all that sort of more complicated how you should play and whatnot, decision making, whatnot comes into play and whatnot. So yeah, newer people aren't really going to get into all of that sort of stuff. Should I stay or should I go? Should I pass or should I, play something? That sort of, decision making, it can be quite difficult. So again, anyway, that is my thoughts on people who are newer playing monocolor decks. I just don't think it's a good way to play the game. If that is the way you want to play the game and you're fine going, okay, cool, I'm going to play mono white and I'm never going to ramp I'm basically never going to ramp and I'm basically never going to draw cards and whatnot, and I'm just going to dirtle along and be in last place the whole game. Cool, great. That's what I want to do because I want a challenge. I want to see how I can make this as good as possible or whatever. Or I want to play mono green because it does everything, except for destroy creatures and have board wipes. Okay, cool. I mean, you don't sort of need board wipes or targeted removal to a degree of creatures if you can kill everyone. So player removal is creature removal, I guess. So yeah, I don't know, but still, it's not as good as what you would think in that regard. And again, I'm not saying that they should get that sort of style of colors should be somewhat limited, and I just think that mono is too limited to a degree. But that's the way I look at it. But if you guys think otherwise, you can tell me in the comments below. I'll be sure to try to respond to all your comments. I really do love interacting with you guys, talking about all these EDH things that we love. So yeah, I'll definitely see you down there in those comments below, or I'll see you. Hey, you've just finished watching one of our videos. A bunch of other videos are popping up on your screen now for you to check out, so why not check them out?